This is section 12 of PLC programming from scratch, and now we're going to start looking at debugging a program and shaking down a system. So what is our goal when we've written our program? We've created a draft of that program. We haven't tested it, we haven't verified anything against a specification. All we have is a raw program that we've written. So what needs to happen next? As a programmer, we need to test this program and make sure everything works. This is the part where we pull out our cause and effect charts, we pull out our customer specifications, we're looking at any Visio diagrams, theories of operation, anything we've been provided that tells us how this system is supposed to run, and we're going to start comparing it to what our program actually does and make sure the two are one and the same. The first step in this process is emulation. When we're testing a program, we don't know if it works or not. We don't know if it's going to cause equipment to explode in somebody's face. All we know is we've taken our first stab at giving them what they want and trying to make this machine run as ordered. So when we first start checking it out, we don't want to run a program for the first time on a live system or in front of a customer or even in front of our boss. We want to run that program in isolation with nobody looking, because there will be bugs, there will be things in that program that do not work exactly as desired, and we want to see them alone when nobody else is looking. And that's not just pride, that's not a matter of self-preservation, that's just professionalism. So how do we run our PLC program without a live system? Actually, depending on what platform you're using to develop your PLC program, there may be a PLC emulator available, such as Rockwell has for RS Logix 500 and RS Logix 5000 programs, and that in this case is RS Logix Emulate 500. This is a computer program which runs a PLC program just like a PLC would, maybe with some limitations or some differences. But it does allow us to test at least the biggest parts of our PLC program's functionality to make sure that it's suitable to even load on a PLC. So let's take a look at this emulator. If you look at this window that we have popped up right here, this very blank looking window is RS Logix Emulate 500. We are not going to get into every aspect of this emulator and all the things it can do. We're going to look at the very basic function of this emulator, and that is to run our PLC program and allow us to interact with it while it's running so that we can make sure everything works as desired. So the first thing I'm going to do is come up to File, Open. I'm going to load up the demo test program, which brings us up this window. We're going to go ahead and set the station number to 1, hit OK, and now our PLC program is loaded. When I then pull up the exact same program in RS Logix 500, and this can't be a different version, this can't be an unsaved copy with a few changes, if this program is not exactly identical to the one we just loaded in the emulator, then it will not connect. Assuming it is identical, we're going to click on Comms, Who Active Go Online, and that's going to bring up our RS Links interface. So to the left of this window, you see we have all of the different drivers and communication protocols loaded into RS Links. We're going to go to the MU500 driver, which is where our emulator is. And we have a MicroLogix 1400 with an untitled online name, and the status is in remote program mode. And that is our emulated PLC running our program. So we'll click on that and go ahead and hit OK. And then you see on the top left here we have remote program processor status. And we've got our ladder icon running in circles, which means we are currently connected to a PLC. And the next thing I'm going to do is select that little arrow next to Remote Prog, click Run, It asks me, are you sure you want to change processor mode to run? And I'm going to go ahead and click yes. That put my emulator in run mode, and now the program is live and running on the PLC emulator, and we're connected to it, which means we can see in the RS Logix 500 environment exactly what is happening in the PLC program while it's running. Not every programming environment allows that functionality that you can actually look at the code right in front of you and see it working, but that's another nice thing about Allen Bradley's programming environments, is that they do have that functionality built in. While we're talking about changing PLC mode, I'm going to go ahead and explain that there are 3 modes that a PLC generally has, and those modes are run, program, and remote. Run mode is self-explanatory. That makes the PLC run the program, control the machine as is desired. Program is the mode we use when we're actually transmitting a program back and forth with the PLC, and the program is not running. So at this point, the PLC is not controlling anything, evaluating inputs, energizing outputs. It's idle, and it's in a mode that we can exchange the program back and forth with a computer. Then we have remote mode, which actually allows a computer to change the mode between remote run and remote program. So now, instead of having to touch the PLC to change the mode with a switch or with a touch screen, so we can do that from our computer while we're in the programming environment. One last thing that I will mention about RS Logix Emulate 500 is that it does have one very noticeable limitation, that it will not execute a PID control loop. So if we need to test a PID control loop to make sure that it's working properly, we have to test that on an actual PLC. That PLC doesn't necessarily have to be live and controlling an entire system, but the PLC at least needs to be what's executing the program, not an emulator. So next lecture, we're going to go ahead and run through a little bit of our program. We're going to see it working live on an emulator, and we're going to get into the next steps of debugging a program. So stick around.